Welcome to the Depth Dive. We're diving deep into excerpts from Digital Minimalism, 10 ways to limit distractions and reclaim your time, just for you today. Get ready to uncover some practical ways to wrestle back control of your time and attention in this crazy, hyper-connected world that we live in.
Yeah, it's not even just about feeling less overwhelmed. It's about understanding the deeper impact that technology has on us.
Exactly. Okay, so picture this. It's 2025, you're at a concert, the music is incredible, the energy is electric, but everyone around you is holding up their phones, recording the whole thing instead of actually experiencing it. Kind of takes away from the magic, right?
It's a perfect example of how we've become so accustomed to viewing life through a digital lens
Hmm.
that we sometimes miss the real thing. And the crazy part is, on average, we're checking our phones almost 50 times a day. For young adults, it's even higher, like over 80 times.
Wow. That's practically every 10 minutes. I mean, think about it. Even when we're trying to relax or connect with others, that little device in our pocket is constantly vying for our attention. And as the source points out, nearly every teenager and most adults even sleep with their phones.
It's like we're tethered to them. And this constant digital stimulation isn't just annoying, it's actually changing the way our brains work. Studies are showing that excessive phone use is linked to structural changes in areas of the brain that control attention and emotional processing.
Hold on, it's not just about feeling distracted, it's actually impacting our brain structure. That's a little unnerving.
It is. It also messes with our ability to focus and increases our stress levels. What's fascinating is that our brains get a hit of dopamine, a feel-good chemical, every time we get a notification or see something exciting online.
Okay, so it's like our brains are getting hooked on those little digital dopamine hits. No wonder it's so hard to resist checking our phones all the time.
Exactly. But there's good news. The source introduces this concept called digital minimalism, which is all about intentionally choosing how we use technology instead of letting it use us.
Sounds like a breath of fresh air. So, how does this whole digital minimalism thing work in practice?
Well, it's about recognizing that technology is a tool. And like any tool, it can be used for good or for bad. Cal Newport, the author, the source quotes, describes it as a philosophy of technology use in which you focus your online time on a small number of carefully selected and optimized activities that strongly support things you value and then happily miss out on everything else.
So, it's not about ditching technology altogether, it's about being more mindful and selective about how we use it.
Exactly. And that's where these 10 strategies come in. They're like practical tools to help us declutter our digital lives and reclaim our time and attention.
All right, let's dive into these strategies. The first one is keep mornings quiet. What's the thinking behind this one?
Well, the idea is to start your day with intention, not with a barrage of notifications and emails. Think about it. Those first few moments after waking up can set the tone for your entire day.
I can definitely see that. Scrolling through social media first thing in the morning often leaves me feeling more anxious and scattered than anything else.
Yeah, the source even suggests keeping your phone in airplane mode overnight or putting it in another room so you're not tempted to reach for it as soon as you open your eyes.
That makes a lot of sense. What's next?
The next strategy is make yourself less available. It challenges the idea that we need to be reachable 24/7. It suggests consolidating, texting, checking, and responding at specific times instead of instantly.
In a world where everyone expects instant responses, that can feel a little rebellious, but I can see how it would be incredibly freeing to set those boundaries.
It is. And it actually allows you to be more present in your interactions because you're not constantly interrupting conversations to check your phone.
So it's not just about reclaiming our time, it's also about improving the quality of our interactions with others.
Precisely.
This next one is rethink email. And I have to admit, my inbox is definitely a source of stress for me.
Oh, you're not alone. The source recommends a pretty radical approach. Removing email from your phone completely. You only check it at specific times on your computer, and that's it.
Wow, I can see how that would significantly reduce the urge to constantly check for new messages. But wouldn't that make me less responsive to urgent requests?
Well, it's about setting expectations. You can let people know your preferred communication methods and when you're typically available to respond.
So it's about being proactive and taking control of our digital communication instead of letting it control us.
Exactly. And the benefits go beyond just reducing stress. Think about how much more focused you could be if you weren't constantly interrupting your work to check your inbox.
All right, let's move on to strategy number 4. Engage in high-quality leisure. What exactly does that mean?
So this is where we circle back to those brain changes we talked about earlier. Spending too much time on low-quality leisure activities, like passively scrolling through social media, can actually make it harder to focus and engage in more challenging and fulfilling activities.
So this is about consciously choosing activities that nourish our minds and bodies instead of just zoning out in front of a screen.
Exactly. Think about activities that require focus and creativity, like reading a book, learning a new skill, or spending time in nature.
I love that. It's about rediscovering the joy of activities that engage us on a deeper level.
And it can be anything that you find truly fulfilling and meaningful. The key is to make a conscious choice to prioritize these activities over mindless scrolling or binge watching.
Now, this next strategy might sound a little counterintuitive in our always connected world. Spend time in silence. What's the rationale behind this one?
It's actually pretty fascinating. You know how we talked about how our brains get those little dopamine hits from our phones? Well, it turns out that silence can help rebalance the brain's reward system.
So, by giving our brains a break from all that stimulation, we're actually helping them function better.
Exactly. And it's not just about brain function. Silence can also be incredibly restorative for our mental and emotional well-being. It gives us space to process our thoughts and emotions, to connect with ourselves on a deeper level, and to simply be present in the moment.
I can definitely see the value in that. Sometimes it feels like our minds are constantly racing, bombarded with information and stimulation.
Yeah, it's like our brains never get a chance to rest and recharge. And that's where silence comes in. It gives our minds the space they need to decompress and reset.
So it's not about becoming a hermit or avoiding all social interaction. It's about intentionally incorporating moments of silence into our day to give our minds and bodies a chance to recover. I love that.
And that leads us to the next strategy, which is intentionally spend time alone.
Now, I know that might sound intimidating to some people, but hear me out.
Well, before smartphones, we had a lot more solitude built into our lives, riding the bus, waiting in line, walking down the street. But now those moments are often filled with checking our phones. The source challenges us to resist that urge and reclaim those natural breaks for reflection and introspection.
It's about recognizing that solitude isn't the same as loneliness. It's about giving ourselves the space to connect with our own thoughts and feelings, to be present with ourselves without the distraction of technology.
Exactly. And it can be incredibly beneficial for our mental and emotional well-being.
All right, this next one seems pretty straightforward, but I bet it's more challenging than it sounds. Challenge the belief that you always need your phone.
It is.
Yeah.
The source suggests doing little experiments like leaving your phone at home while running errands or putting it in the bottom of your bag instead of your pocket.
You know, I've noticed that I often reach for my phone without even thinking about it, just out of habit. Like when I'm waiting in line or riding the elevator, it's almost like a subconscious reflex.
It is.
Mhm.
And by intentionally making our phones less accessible, we start to break that automatic habit and question whether we really need them in every situation.
So it's about becoming more aware of our phone use habits and making conscious choices about when and where we engage with our devices.
Precisely.
All right, we're making great progress. Let's move on to strategy number 8, which is all about raising your awareness of how social media is designed to keep us hooked.
This one is crucial. We need to understand the tactics these platforms use to keep us scrolling and clicking. It's not by accident that they're so addictive.
It's like they've figured out the perfect formula to keep us engaged, even if it's not always in our best interest. What kind of tactics are we talking about here?
Well, one of the big ones is variable reinforcement. It's like those slot machines in Vegas. You never know when you're going to hit the jackpot, so you keep pulling the lever, hoping for that next rush of excitement.
So social media is basically like a slot machine for our brains. That's a pretty scary thought.
It is. And that's why it's so important to be aware of these tactics.
Yeah.
Once we understand how they work, we can start to break free from their grip.
Okay, that makes sense. So once we've raised our awareness of these tactics, what's the next step?
It's time to change how you use social media. This strategy is all about taking back control and using social media on our own terms.
I'm all for that. So how do we actually do that?
The source suggests removing social media apps from your phone completely and only accessing them on your computer at specific times.
That sounds like a pretty big change,
Wow.
but I can see how it would limit mindless scrolling and make us more intentional about our social media use.
Exactly. It's about setting boundaries and making sure that social media fits into our lives, not the other way around.
This is all starting to make so much sense. It's like we've been sleepwalking through our digital lives, letting technology dictate our habits and behaviors. But with these strategies, we can wake up and start making conscious choices about how we use technology and how we want to live our lives.
That's exactly it. And that brings us to our final strategy for this part of our deep dive.
Oh, we're already at the end of part 1.
Oh.
But we still have one more strategy to uncover.
We do, and trust me, it's a good one. We'll be diving into that in part 2, so make sure you stay tuned. Welcome back to our deep dive into digital minimalism. We left off with 9 powerful strategies for reclaiming your time and attention from the clutches of digital distraction.
Yeah, and we're about to unveil the 10th, which might seem deceptively simple at first.
It is simple, but don't underestimate its power. It's about intentionally keeping your phone out of sight more often.
Out of sight, out of mind, as they say. But how does that actually help with digital minimalism?
It goes back to those automatic habits we were talking about. When our phones are constantly within reach, we're more likely to mindlessly pick them up and scroll through social media or check our email, even when we don't really need to.
Oh, it's like our brains are wired to seek out those little dopamine hits, and our phones are the perfect delivery system. So by simply putting our phones away, we're breaking that cycle and giving our brains a chance to rest and reset.
Exactly. Think about it. Do you really need your phone on the table during dinner with friends or family, or while you're reading a book or taking a walk in nature?
Probably not. But it's become such an ingrained habit to have it with us at all times.
It has. And that's why this strategy is so powerful. It's about consciously choosing when and where we engage with our devices and creating space for other activities and experiences that don't involve screens.
I love that. It's like we're giving ourselves permission to disconnect and be present in the moment without the constant distraction of the digital world. So instead of having our phones out on the table during dinner, we could actually, talk to each other. Imagine that.
Exactly. Or instead of mindlessly scrolling through our phones while we're waiting in line, we could use that time to observe our surroundings, engage in a conversation with someone nearby, or simply let our minds wander.
This is all starting to click for me. It's not about demonizing technology or becoming a Luddite. It's about recognizing that technology is a tool, and like any tool, it can be used for good or bad.
Exactly. It's about using technology in a way that enhances our lives, not detracts from it.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into these 10 strategies, what's the key takeaway for our listeners?
Um, I think the most important thing is to remember that digital minimalism is a journey, not a destination. It's about finding what works for you and making gradual changes to your digital habits over time.
Yeah, it's about finding that sweet spot where technology supports our values and goals rather than hindering them.
Precisely. And remember, even small changes can make a big difference.
So if you're feeling overwhelmed by the digital world and longing for more time, focus, and presence, we encourage you to experiment with these strategies and see what works for you.
You might be surprised at how much more fulfilling and meaningful your life can be when you're not constantly tethered to your devices.
And with that, we've reached the end of our exploration of these 10 strategies for embracing digital minimalism. But our journey isn't over yet.
That's right. In part 3, we'll be addressing some common questions and concerns about digital minimalism, and we'll share some additional resources to help you on your journey, so stay tuned.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We've spent this episode exploring the world of digital minimalism, uncovering 10 powerful strategies for taking back control of our time and attention. Now, we want to shift gears a bit and address some of the common questions and concerns that come up when people start thinking about this shift in their digital lives.
Yeah, it's natural to have questions and maybe even some hesitations. After all, we live in a world where being constantly connected is seen as the norm.
Exactly. So let's just dive into some of those questions and see if we can unpack them together. One question I hear a lot is, what if I miss out on important information or social events if I disconnect from social media? I bet you heard that one too.
Absolutely.
Mm.
And it's a valid concern. But I think it's important to remember that social media often presents a distorted view of reality. People tend to share the highlight reel of their lives, not the everyday moments or struggles.
So it's not necessarily a true reflection of what's actually happening in our friends' and families' lives.
Right. And chances are, if something truly important is happening, you'll hear about it through other channels like a phone call or text message.
That makes sense. It's about being selective with our sources of information and recognizing that we don't need to be bombarded with every single update or piece of news that's circulating online. What about the fear of missing out on social events? If I'm not constantly checking social media, will I become a hermit?
Well, I think the key here is to be proactive about staying connected with the people who matter most to you. If you're worried about missing out on social gatherings, reach out to your friends and family directly, schedule phone calls or video chats, or propose getting together in person.
So it's about shifting our focus from passive online interaction to more active and meaningful connection in the real world. I love that. Another question I hear frequently is, This all sounds great, but I'm so overwhelmed. Where do I even begin?
It's easy to feel overwhelmed when you think about overhauling your entire digital life overnight. But remember, digital minimalism is not an all-or-nothing proposition. It's about making small, gradual changes that feel sustainable for you.
So instead of trying to implement all 10 strategies at once, maybe start with just one or two that resonate with you the most.
Exactly. Maybe you could start by keeping your phone in airplane mode overnight or setting aside 30 minutes each day for a digital detox.
Small steps, big impact. Now, before we wrap things up, I'd love to hear your thoughts on where listeners can go to learn more about digital minimalism and connect with others who are on this journey.
Oh, there are so many wonderful resources out there. The source we've been discussing, Digital Minimalism, 10 Ways to Limit Distractions and Reclaim Your Time, is a great starting point for practical tips and strategies.
And of course, there's Cal Newport's book, Digital Minimalism, Choosing a Focused Life in a Noisy World, which delves deeper into the philosophy and provides real-world examples and inspiration.
There are also tons of fantastic podcasts and online communities dedicated to this topic. A quick search online will uncover a wealth of information and support.
It's amazing to see how many people are embracing this movement and finding ways to live more intentionally in our digital age. And that brings us to the end of our deep dive into digital minimalism. We hope this episode has given you some food for thought and inspired you to take a closer look at your own digital habits.
Remember, you have the power to choose how technology fits into your life. It's about finding what works for you and creating a digital landscape that supports your values, your goals, and your well-being.
So as you go forth into the digital world, we leave you with this question. What is one small change you can make today to reclaim your time, your attention, and your life? It could be as simple as turning off notifications for a certain app, setting a time limit for social media use, or leaving your phone in another room while you enjoy dinner with loved ones.
Whatever it is, take that first step and see where it leads you. You might be surprised at how liberating it feels to break free from the digital clutter and create space for the things that truly matter.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep into the things that make you curious.